Hi friends, welcome to Ajay Automates channel. So before starting this video, I want to wish you all success this new year, that is for 2025, and I will try my level best to provide you very good quality automation training content as well as very important automation testing interview questions. Okay, so let's switch to the video. In this video, we are going to quickly see about the real-time scenario-based Selenium automation interview questions as well as commonly asked automation framework related and Selenium technique related interview questions. And finally, we will see about 10 Selenium programs asked recently and asked in many interviews. Okay, so these questions are combined from almost 20 to 25 real-time interviews. Okay, and I strongly believe you will get these questions in many of your automation interviews. So please do watch the whole video. This will be really helpful in your automation career and as well as your upcoming automation interviews. So let's start with real-time scenario-based questions. So the first question is, so consider you have joined a new project and application development is in progress or it's in its initial stages. So the question is, can you start automation parallelly here? And the answer is, it's always better to start automation once the application has become more stable or once the major features development is completed and thorough manual testing is performed. Okay, so why? Because you might face locator specific issues or build stability issues when you start automation parallelly when applications development is also in progress. So consider you have developed automation scripts for a web application. Okay, after some days it might not work. Why? Because the developer has included new features inside the application and your locator might not be there, it got changed to some other name. So that is one main challenge we face in this situation. Okay, so it's always better to start automation once the application has become more stable. Okay, so let's see the next question. In your project there can be thousands of test cases. How do you choose automation test case? This is an important question asked in many interviews. So initially we have to start automating critical priority test cases and then only we can go for low priority test cases. So initially start automating P0 test cases and then you can go for major functionality and UI related test cases. So you have to choose test cases in this order: critical, high and medium. This makes sure business critical test cases are automated first and then we are automating low priority test cases. Okay. So let's see the next question. As an automation engineer, what is your contribution to the team? Or it can be asked like this: what is your roles and responsibilities in your current team? So as an automation engineer, we are responsible for performing UI automation, API automation for in-sprint user stories, as well as we automate existing regression test cases from the backlog. Okay, we choose test cases from the backlog also along with the in-sprint user stories. So we are responsible for performing code review, we are responsible for enhancing test automation framework, and you can explain this also. You have integrated your framework with CI/CD pipeline and make sure automation scripts gets executed every 24 hours automatically if you have done this. Okay. So the next question is, explain about the test process you are following in creating test scripts, that is your automation workflow. So most of our project works in agile methodology, so you should have a 2 to 3 week sprint. Okay, so we perform in sprint automation as well as we automate test cases from the backlog also, that is regression test cases. So once we develop test scripts, what we do, we push the changes to the Git repo and code review is being performed by your test lead. Okay, so once code review is completed, we push the change, we create a PR and push the changes to the master branch. So that is the automation workflow. Okay, so create a script, merge the changes to your Git repo and create PR and push the changes to master branch. So you can explain this process in the interview. Okay. So why do you choose Selenium when you have many other tools in the market? I have seen these questions also asked in many interviews. So because Selenium is open source and we can automate multiple web applications, multiple browsers, and we can automate in different OS also. Okay, we can achieve parallel execution, cross browser testing, and if you need any help, there is a large community available online to help for our queries in Selenium. So if you face any errors in Selenium, we can post it anywhere and we can get help quickly. So, and it's also a very popular tool in the current market. So in which test you have used find elements and what is the use of find elements? Okay, so find elements helps in returning a list of multiple matching web elements, whereas find element returns only one matching web element. Okay, so the question is where you have used find elements. So to find broken links in a web application, we can use find elements and get all the matching web elements with tag name A. So you can explain this test case to the interviewer. Okay, we get all the web elements with tag name k and make sure it returns the response code as 200, and this way we can make sure all our web applications web links are working fine. Okay, so the next question is, what are the best practices you follow as an test automation developer? So as an web automation developer, we are responsible for maintaining coding standards, we are responsible for following design principles like OOPS concepts, and we are responsible for performing regular code refactoring to improve our test execution time, and we are also responsible for regular code check-ins, follow code review process, and maintaining code documentation. So these are all best practices you can explain to the interviewer. Okay, so how do you choose automation framework? There are different frameworks like data driven, keyword driven, and VDD framework. It completely depends on our project requirements. If your project is depending on too much test data, you can go for either data driven or keyword driven frameworks. So if the project requirement is clearly defined and the app is focusing on user acceptance test cases, you can go for BDD frameworks. Okay, so this question is completely depend on your project requirements, and please be careful in explaining. So consider in a web page there are 3 web elements with same ID value, say ID equal to product. What will find element do in this test case? Which ID will be located? Okay, so in a web page there are 3 web elements with ID name as product. Okay, ID is equal to product is matching 3 times. Okay, so what will find element do in this case is find element will identify the first matching web element. Even there are 3 web elements with the same name, find element will return the first matching web element. Suppose if you want to identify the third web element with ID equal to product, you can go for indexing and locate that particular web element. Okay, so let's see the next question. How many test cases you automate per sprint? This is an easy one. In a 2-week sprint, we automate around 2 to 3 critical test cases, 5 to 6 major test cases, or 10 to 12 minor test cases. So along with automation, we'll be having manual testing activity as well. So please be very careful in answering this question. Okay, so we are not going to automate more than 3 to 4 critical test cases. Okay, so is it possible to automate everything? 100% automation is possible or not? No, it's definitely not possible to automate everything. There are few scenarios where automation is not possible. We completely depend on manual testing there. Okay, so what are the challenges you have faced as an automation engineer? In our career, we have faced many technical challenges. Okay, so you can explain that automating with CAPTCHA might be difficult. So handling dynamic web elements was difficult, and integrating framework with CI/CD pipeline was a major challenge we overcome. So these challenges I have faced in my career. So you can add any points here. So how do you perform code optimization? As an automation engineer, we are responsible for performing code optimization and perform regular code refactoring, in which way we can improve our test execution time. Okay, so this is an important question. So we can perform code optimization by performing regular code refactoring and removing sleep commands. So avoid using implicit wait and try to use explicit wait wherever required. Okay, and avoid code duplication. Do not repeat the same code again in multiple tests. Okay, so in this way you can explain I am performing code optimization in these ways. Okay, this is a very important question. So how do you interact with dynamic web elements? You might have seen this question in almost all the tutorials and most of the interviews. This question is being asked. How do you automate dynamic web elements? So suppose, what is dynamic web element? Suppose there is no direct way to locate web elements, we can go for absolute expert strategy. So consider you are automating a web element. After some time it might not be there because the web element keeps on changing. That is dynamic web element. Okay, so using absolute expert strategy we can overcome this problem. Okay, so what we have to do, from root node to the desired web element we have to write expert, and this way we can handle dynamic web elements. So why do we have to use wait mechanism in running our Selenium test? This is an important question. So why do we use wait mechanism is sometimes a web element might take longer time to load or appear. Okay, at that time we might get no such element exception. So to handle this case we go for Selenium wait, like explicit wait, implicit, or fluent wait. Okay, so wait commands helps to ensure that the automation scripts wait for certain conditions to be met before the test scripts are executed. Okay, so as I said, this is an important interview question, so please read it thoroughly. And next question is, how does parallel execution benefits you? Parallel execution meaning, suppose if you have 1000 automation tests, we are going to divide the test here. Okay, we are going to make sure 500 tests are executed in one machine and 500 tests are executed in another machine or another platform. So in this way we can save our test execution time, as well as we make sure our tests are running in multiple platforms, maybe in Windows, Mac and Linux platforms. Okay, so we can achieve parallel testing execution or parallel testing using Selenium Grid or using TestNG. Okay, so if why you are using TestNG library in an automation framework, I have seen this question asked in many interviews. So TestNG annotations helps to organize our test and make our framework code more readable, and it helps in code structuring. Okay, which makes it easy to recognize. We are splitting our test in at before test, at after test, at before method, after method, which makes our code more readable. Okay, also TestNG helps in grouping and prioritizing test cases. So HTML test report generation is available, and it supports parallel execution as well. Okay, that's why we are using TestNG library in our automation framework. So how do you achieve cross-browser testing using Selenium? Cross-browser testing meaning how do you execute your single automation test in multiple browsers. Suppose if you have to execute your test in Firefox, Chrome and Edge browsers in the same time, what will you do? So we can go for TestNG library annotation at parameters, and we have to pass the parameter name as well as parameter value inside our TestNG XML file. In that way we can achieve parallel testing. Also, if you have integrated your framework with cloud platforms like BrowserStack or Lambda test, you can inform that also to the developer that we have done parallel testing using BrowserStack and Lambda test cloud platforms also. Okay, so let's now see about the automation framework based interview question commonly asked in many interviews. So the first question, as you know, what type of framework you are working on, what are the components of your automation framework? Almost in 99% of the interview you will get this question. So explain about what kind of framework you are working on and what kind of design pattern you are following on, like page object model, and for test data what you are using, and for test reporting what you are using, like extend reports or being TestNG reports. You can talk about these things in the interview. Okay, so we can talk about TestNG annotations, as well as you are using Git repo for version controlling, and for CI/CD test execution you are using Bamboo or Jenkins pipeline. Okay, this is a very important interview question. So how do you manage Selenium or Maven related dependencies? Using pom.xml file we will add all the testing related dependencies. Okay, so how will you identify failed test cases in your framework? So if you are using TestNG library in your framework, after test execution, inside the test output folder there will be a file called testng fail.xml generated. So in that file we will get all the failed test cases name. Okay, in that way we can work on the failed test cases and re-execute only these particular test cases. So what are the improvements you have made to enhance your test automation framework? So if you have contributed anything for the improvement of automation framework, you can inform here, like you have integrated extend reports in your automation framework, that is an improvement made to your automation framework. So if you have integrated with CI/CD pipeline, or if you are doing regular code refactoring, you can talk about these for these questions. Okay, this is also a very important question. So what are the OOPS concepts you have used in your automation framework? You can talk about inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction and encapsulation here. So inheritance example is, from base class we have called all our attributes to our child test classes, right? So you can talk about that. And for polymorphism example is method overloading and overriding. Abstraction meaning hiding the implementation details and showing only the major functionality to the users. Okay, and encapsulation meaning we bind the code and data together inside a single unit. Okay, so this is an important question. And the next question is, what are the interfaces available in your automation framework? This is commonly asked in many interviews, and there are multiple interfaces available. Okay, we have to explain at least 6 interfaces, like WebDriver, iTest listener, take screenshot, JavaScript execution, actions and logs. These are some interfaces used in our automation framework, and there are many more interfaces available. Okay, so why is WebDriver called as an interface? So interface meaning it defines method that classes should implement. Okay, that other classes should implement. Okay, so why is WebDriver called as an interface? Because the implementation of WebDriver is provided by browser specific classes. Some of the implementation classes are Chrome driver, Firefox driver, Safari driver. So these are some of the implementation of web driver, okay, Chrome driver, Firefox driver and Safari driver. So for this question, just talk about the interface first, what is an interface, and then you can talk about why web driver is called as an interface. Because the implementation classes of web driver are Chrome driver, Firefox driver and Safari driver. Okay, the implementation of WebDriver is provided by these browser specific classes. So this is a really important question. So can you explain about the coding standards you follow in your test automation framework? Okay, so we are following OOPS design principles. So we might follow naming conventions for variable names and method names like camel case standards. You can talk about that. And we avoid code duplication. We put all the common code in our base class and call to our child classes or test classes. Okay, we follow branching strategy and we follow regular code check-ins and code review process, and we maintain code documentation. These are some of the major coding standards we should follow in our test automation framework. Okay, this is also an important question. So how are you generating test results? How screenshot is captured? If you have integrated your framework with external report library, so after every text execution, our extend reports has our paused failed status as well as the screenshot of the executed test. Okay, so in this way we can generate test results as well as screenshot is captured inside our HTML file generated. So in your framework you can have thousands of test cases. I want to execute only login or dashboard page related test cases. What will you do here? This is also an important question. So we can go for TestNG grouping concept here. Okay, the TestNG library provides an annotation called group where we can separate login or dashboard page related test cases, and we can execute only those test cases. Okay, so what we should do here is, along with our attest annotation, we have to provide a group name called as login or dashboard here, and in our XML file we have to use include tag and specify only the particular group name here. So in this case it's group include tag is equal to login. Okay, and we have already added along with the attest annotation, so we can execute that particular XML file and only login page related groups test cases will be executed. Okay, so what version control tool you are using and what command you are using to push the code? We all use git repository mostly for version controlling, and the messages to commit and pushers, git commit message and git push command helps us to push the code to our git repository. Okay, so what is page object model and what type of design pattern we follow? So page object model design pattern meaning for every web page in the application we have corresponding object classes. Okay, so page object model helps in improving code reusability and readability. Okay, so do you execute test cases locally or do you use CI/CD pipeline? So if you are executing test cases locally, just explain that process, or if you have integrated with automation, so CI/CD pipeline, you can explain that process as well. Okay, so once we push the code to the git repo, our CI/CD pipeline has the capability to automatically execute our tests. Okay, this is an important point you have to mention to the interviewer. Once code changes are detected, CI/CD build gets automatically executed, as well as your build will be executed automatically every 24 hours. Okay, so you might have configured for 24 hours or 12 hours, so I have configured for every 24 hours. So now let's review about the commonly asked Selenium techniques based interview questions. So the first question is there a way to type in a text box without using send keys? Yes, we can use the help of JavaScript executor. So we don't need send keys, instead we can use JavaScript executor and pass values inside a text box. So what are the softwares required to perform automation testing? We need Java and an editor like Eclipse or IntelliJ, and we need Maven, and we need to configure the git repository inside our framework. Okay, we also need Selenium and TestNG jars configuration through our pom.xml file. Okay, so these are some of the softwares required to perform automation testing. What is the latest Selenium version? 4.27.0 released in November 25, 2024. So always read the release notes whenever and latest Selenium version is released. So in this version, Chrome DevTools supports it's upgraded to till version 131. Okay, and get attribute is depreciated now from Selenium version 4.27.0. so these are some of the major release notes. Okay, so how will you handle upload file scenarios? We can handle upload file scenarios in many ways. We can use send keys and we can use robot class as well. Okay, how will you enter and delete values in a text box? We can use send keys to enter values. To delete values we can use clear. option. So what are the different types of weights used in Selenium? Implicit, explicit and fluent weight are the different types of weights used, and implicit is used to set default waiting time throughout your application whole Selenium programs, okay, whereas explicit weight is used for particular web elements only, and fluent weight can be used when you feel a certain web element have certain polling time or intervals to appear. Okay, so what is a web element? Web elements are nothing but HTML web elements, like HTML elements like text box, drop downs or submit buttons, etc. Okay, so these HTML web elements will be having a start tag and will be having an end tag as well. So what is the best locator according to you? So whenever you have ID values, you can go for ID value because it's the fastest way to locate a web element, and if there is no ID, we can go for XPath or CSS selector. Okay, and XPath and CSS selectors can be used to help handling dynamic web elements as well. That is, locators keep on changing, we can go for XPath or CSS selectors. Okay, and what is the difference between relative and absolute XPath? Absolute XPath is still helpful for handling dynamic web elements. Okay, so what we do, we start from the root web element to the desired web element. We'll be starting to write XPath from the root of the HTML tree to the desired web element, whereas relative XPath directly reference to the web element. Okay, but relative XPath is more preferred because it's the fastest way to locate a web element compared to absolute XPath, and absolute XPath might fail if there is a change in the HTML tree structure by the developer. Okay, but for handling dynamic web elements, absolute XPath is more useful. What is the difference between following sibling and preceding sibling access? So following sibling can be used to select all the sibling elements that appear after your current web element, whereas preceding sibling is opposite. It's used to select all sibling elements that appear before the current web element. Okay, and the next question is, how will you automate dropdown? So using select class, we can automate dropdown. Select class provides options like select by value, index and visible text, which are helpful to pick the values from the dropdown. And how will you automate alert window using Selenium? So using switch to method, we can switch Selenium control to the appearing alert message, and using accept method, we can click OK button, and using dismiss, we can click cancel button, and using get text, we can get the text present in the alert window. So how will you automate multiple window based scenarios? So consider you are clicking a link and a new window gets opened. If you want to switch Selenium control to that new window, you have to use get window handles. So using get window handles, we can switch the Selenium control to the new window, and we can automate the new window test cases. Okay, and what difference you see between get and navigate commands? So driver.get command is used to navigate to a particular website. However, it does not maintain browser history and cookies, so we cannot go backward and forward in driver.get, whereas driver.navigate maintain the browser history and cookies, so we can do forward and backward also using driver.navigate. So this is the difference between get and navigate. And how will you verify whether a web element is present in a web page? Using isDisplayed method, we can verify whether an element is present or not in the web page. And different exceptions you see while automation: no such element not visible, null pointer exception is thrown when you try to take data from any sources and data is not available, stale element exception, element not interactable, and timeout exception. So these are some of the common exceptions we see during automation. And what is the use of Chrome options? So whenever you have to configure a Chrome driver session or customized Chrome driver session, we can use Chrome options. So Chrome options helps us to perform various operations like opening Chrome in headless browsers mode, to set browser site, and there are many more uses of Chrome options. Okay, so the next question is, write an XPath for a link which contains text, submit this page. So you have to share a screen and write XPath here. Using contains attribute, we can identify this XPath. Okay, and definitely there will be question on writing XPath. Okay, so they will share one website and they will ask you to identify XPath for any particular web element. So please do prepare for this question. And what is the difference between driver.close and quit? Close command closes the current tab or window and continue the test in other tabs, whereas quit command is used at the end of the test suite to close all the browsers opened by Selenium. So why do you need assertion commands? What is the purpose of assertion? So assertion is used to check whether the expected result and actual result are the same. Suppose consider you are validating a page title, you can provide the expected title name and actual title using driver.getTitle and verify both are matching. So if the test is passed, assertion the test case will be passed. If it is failing, assertion will throw an error that the expected and actual are not the same. Okay, so what are the test ng annotations you are aware of? You can explain about at test, at before test, after test, using data provider parameters. So what are the annotations you are aware of? You can explain it. And if you have multiple attest annotation in a class file, which test will be running first? In this scenario, test will be running on alphabetical order A to Z, and test name starting with A will be executed first and B will be executed next, and goes on. So how will you prioritize automation tests? So we can prioritize using priority attribute. So priority equal to 0 meaning that test will be executed first, and priority equal to 1 meaning it will be executed second, and goes on. So if there is no priority given for test, then Selenium will consider default priority, which is 0. Okay, so what is the use of testng.xml file? Suppose if you have to run multiple tests from multiple different packages, you can define all the tests inside the XML file, and those particular tests alone will be running. You can use include tag and exclude tag to specify test methods to be executed and not, and testng.xml file helps in parallel execution also. Okay, we will be using parallel equal to tests or methods attributes inside the XML file to start parallel execution as well. And how do you create test dependencies? Using depends on method annotation, which is provided by testng. Suppose one test is depending on another test too, so we will be using depends on methods annotation there. Okay, and what is the use of data provider annotation? Data provider annotation helps to supply data to our Selenium test. Okay, so from variety of sources like Excels, databases, etc. So what is parameterization in testng? So parameterization helps us to run our Selenium test with multiple time with different values. Okay, so we can achieve parameterization using two ways. One is through testng.xml file, another one is through data providers annotation provided by testng. Okay, so now let's see about the commonly asked Selenium programs in recent reviews. So the first program is write a Selenium program to verify success message is displayed after a successful file upload. So basically here you have to write the code for uploading a file and then verify success message is displayed. So using send keys, I am uploading the file here. You can talk about robot class also. Okay, so initially I am passing the file path, image file path using send keys, and I am clicking on upload button, and finally using is displayed I am verifying the success message is displayed or not. So if it's not displayed, you can use another loops and print some other messages. Okay, so let's see the next program. Write a Selenium program to log in and wait for an element, say item 1 visibility, and then perform a click operation. So we can achieve this case using explicit wait. So write a program to log into a website and then declare explicit wait, and you have to wait till the visibility of element is located. So using expected conditions and visibility of element located, we can achieve this test case. Okay, and finally perform a click operation here. So using explicit wait, we can solve this test case. The next program is write a Selenium program to drag and drop an item in the website. So basically you have to declare two web elements here. One is for dragging the element, and the second web element is for the to place where you are going to drop the web element. Okay, so using drag and drop option provided by actions class, you can perform this test case. Okay, and the next program is write a Selenium program to click on a link from one window and automate the page opened in a new window. So basically we are going to write program using driver.getWindow handles. This program is asking almost 4 to 5 interviews. Okay, so basically you have to click on a link first, and then you have to show driver get how window handles is getting worked. Okay, you have to use set, and you have to iterate to the web pages, okay, child window pages, and finally you have to switch to the parent window also. So this is an important program, so please do carefully execute this program once. Okay, write a Selenium program to click on a drop down value. So using select class, we can automate drop downs, and select class provide options like select by value, index, and visible text to provide to select values from the drop down. Okay, so this is also commonly asked in many interviews, for especially for 0 to 6 year experience candidates. Write a Selenium program to get the text present in allowed window and click OK button. So basically you have to switch the Selenium control to the allowed window using switch to method, and you are going to get the text. Using get text method, we can get the text present in the alert window, and we have to click OK button also. So we have to use accept method, driver.switch to alert.accept method to click on OK button. Okay. The next program is write a command to verify your web page source contains 404 error. So using assertion we can get the page source, and using contains attribute we can verify 404 is present or not here. The next program is write a Selenium program to scroll to a particular web element in the web page. This is also almost asking 4 to 5 interviews. Okay, scroll to a particular web element. They will share a website URL, and you have to write the Selenium code to scroll to a particular web element. So initially declare as a web element what element you are going to scroll to. Using JavaScript executor and execute script, you scroll into view method. We can scroll to this particular web element. This is a really important interview question. Okay, so write a Selenium program to explain depends on method annotation. This question was recently asked in 2 interviews. Okay, how depends on methods is working. So we create 2 methods, and using depends on methods, make sure one method is dependent on another method. Here there are 2 tests, test2 and test1 launch app. So test2 is depending on test1 launch app. Okay, so only if test1 launch app test case is passed, test2 will be executed. Okay, because test2 is dependent on test1 launch app test case. Okay, and the next program is write the program to test broken links in the web page. This is also almost asked in 4 to 5 interviews. Okay, so you have to get all the links in the web page using find elements, and you have to iterate to all the links and make sure none of the links is returning 400 status code or 404 or 500 status code. In this way we can test broken links in the web application. We have to use HTTP URL connection and set request method and connect to all these URL and verify it's returning 200 or 400 or 404 500 status codes. Okay, so these are some of the 10 programs asked in recent Selenium interviews. So we have come to the end of today's video, and please do subscribe my channel if you feel my channel is providing good automation testing interview questions and answers, as well as automation testing training contents. And for automation testing training you can reach us in this email. Okay, so we are from Trivandrum, Kerala. So for offline training also you can reach us in this email. Okay, so have a good day. Bye then.